Greetings, travelers. It's Sunday, January 19th, and welcome to the Greetings from Gaming Corner, where we talk about games that we love. I'm your host, Tyler Smith. I'm joined, as always, by my two favorites, Olivia.
Hi.
And Rebecca.
Hi.
Love it. Off to a great start. Hope you guys enjoyed your holiday season. Did you guys play any games?
Just a few.
Just a few.
Just a few. You guys want to brush over those briefly, or I don't know if you guys were catching up on your backlogs or.
I started Fire Emblem Three Houses, and I'm like, wow, this is going to be a 9,000 hour investment, and I shouldn't fuck with this. It's like poison, and just inject it into my veins. And I've gotten this really bad habit of I should get all the achievements in video games. I haven't had this in probably 10 years, for some reason that's gotten in my brain. So I was looking at the achievements for Outer Wilds, and or Outer Worlds, and I'm like, yeah, I can do this. This isn't that bad. Play the Supernova campaign, make it happen.
Nope.
And GDQ's happening, so I'm like, yeah, I'll just do the GDQ strategy.
Yeah.
Rebecca, what have you been playing?
So I bought Pokemon. So I'm a Pokemon person.
Hell yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I was playing Pokemon Sword. I still haven't caught a Wooloo, and so I find that very difficult. I think that the Galar Meowths are really scary when they run at you.
They are.
I am trying to get used to the idea of the wilds because I don't like things that are scary looking just running at me full speed. So that's not great.
Have you had a wave of Machokes come at you? Because I think that's the scariest thing. These burly boys are just coming at you.
I haven't yet. I like Ball Guy. I saw that you could catch Ball Guy as a Pokemon, and so I don't know. I think I saw something on Polygon about how you can catch Ball Guy and he can be Dynamax or something. I don't know. This is all coming from someone who doesn't really understand Pokemon at all. Okay. But his little dance from the Malomart from Twilight Princess. I've had that song stuck in my head all Christmas.
Well, I'm so happy for you, though. That's amazing. I'm glad you're enjoying it so far.
Yeah.
Are you part of the Grookey gang, or who did you pick?
Grookey.
Hell yeah.
Sorry.
Traitor.
He was so cute, and I was like, he's this big, and he sits on my shoulder, and I love him.
But so is Sobble. You don't know.
Welcome.
I like Sobble, but he cries on my shoulder.
Well,
it's just so wet.
I guess. Fine.
I do not like Grookey's evolution. So.
I comfort my Pokemon. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. I myself also played some games over the holiday break. I got into Untitled Goose Game.
Oh.
I'm not going to say it's a bad game. It's a little underwhelming coming off of all the hype. I still love it. I still think it's a really great game, but in my head, it built it up a little too big. I felt what it's missing is more, I might be playing I personally might be playing the game a little slow. And the music cues, for when you get into trouble, that's really great, but I wish it kind of carried through when you were just doing nothing. So I hate when the game kind of just stops the music and you're just kind of wandering on your own. But I haven't beaten it. I can't really give a review on it or anything. It's just first impressions on it. But I'm glad you guys had some time to play some games. We are here today to talk about a few games that we really love and hope you guys, listeners, should play. I, as the host, will just go ahead and start off. This game is very beloved to me. It is one of my games of the decade. So if you've read my Game of the Decade post, you would know what it is. It's coming in hot. Darkest Dungeon by Red Hook Studios. Came out in 2016, so 4 years ago at this point. It's created by Tyler Sigmund and Chris Barossa, mainly. They had this smaller team, I think of maybe 5 to 10 people, but they were the two headliners, Tyler being the main overall designer of the game and Chris being the art direction. This game I've talked about many times in different forms via our past podcasts and also in written form, like I said, on the gaming post on our website. But this game is near and dear to my heart. If I had to describe the game, it is a turn-based style RPG. I hate using this, but it's a Dark Souls-like in the sense that it's just very punishing gameplay based on your decisions as a player. And it has this very dark and grungy art aesthetic going on. The plot is very simple. It's just you inherit this estate from your dying grandfather or dying relative, and then I don't know, for some reason you decide to go into the basement and dig up the cave or something that it's attached to, and you unleash hell upon your estate and the town's village below. And so then you are taken upon you to like go and find adventurers to quash the evil that you have unleashed. What I really like about this game is the mechanics itself. And I feel like, I know that people get really discouraged when they hear something like Dark Souls because they don't like punishing games or games that are just like so difficult and so frustrating. But this game, I feel like, does it very well. The fact that it's turn-based makes it more palatable and like easier. I'm not a big turn-based person myself. And I feel like when you play the game, the mechanics themselves just kind of fall into place. The gameplay is essentially you have a set of heroes and you make up a small party of 4 people. There are so many heroes in this game, I think 10 to 13, and they all have different dynamics whenever you put them in together. And you go explore the caves and dungeons within the game. And it just creates different play styles. And there's no wrong or right hero to choose from. Like, there are no bad heroes, there are no good heroes. It just really depends on your group makeup and then like what you encounter within these dungeons. It's kind of random, and so it's always fresh and new. But what makes it interesting is that there's a light mechanic in it, and you have like a torch essentially. You have the brighter the torch shines, the easier the game is, but the less loot, the less rewarding it is overall. If you let the torchlight dim or go darker and darker until it's extinguished, like, the monsters become very difficult. The loot is increased dramatically to the point where you're just like overflowing with loot and you have to keep on dropping things. But the game is interesting for people who might not enjoy these kind of games. I recommend. It's a game I haven't finished, and I still recommend it to everyone because it's just that good. You know, I've been playing this game for 3 to 4 years now, and every time I play it, it's just a breath of fresh air. I know, Rebecca, I think you've played this, correct?
Yep, I played it. I haven't finished it either. It's hard as shit.
It's real super hard as shit. Yes. What about it draws you to it?
I don't know. I was drawn in initially by the art style, you know what I mean? Because it's so striking and it has such a great gothic, like, morbid, I don't know, there's something just, like, terribly grotesque about the look of it, like, the faces of all the characters, the town, everything, that it just, I feel like its art direction speaks very well to the story that it's trying to tell. And I don't know, I found myself over time growing sort of attached to some of my characters, like the characters that you're given right in the very beginning. I know you can get an achievement if you can, like, finish a run with them still alive, and then that became, like, a focus of my obsession, was, like, protecting my little children and being like, no, shh, the dark is scary, it's fine. I love that.
Correct. Yeah, I get that too. I get very attached to my heroes, and I'm like, no, because what happens in this game that makes it, like, so frustrating, but also, like, I don't know, you just get this attachment to them, is sometimes, you know, you're going great, your run is almost done, and your heroes are all alive and good health and everything, but then you'll encounter just one fight, and for whatever reason they either go insane, because there's, like, this mechanic called resolve, and if you're resolve, it's basically madness. If your madness meter fills all the way up, you either your resolve is tested, so you either become this chivalrous or virtuous person, beacon of light, I would say, within the darkness, or you become, like, the devil incarnate, and, like, you become this source of anger and pain, and you inflict damage upon your other teammates. Anyway, point is that your characters, the flow of combat and your characters, they can be alive the one moment and then, like, dead the next, or in trouble the next. Olivia, I don't believe that you have played this game, but you've heard about it.
I have, and I think one of the things that I thought was super interesting about it was some of the changes that happened in early access. Did you play this game at all while it was in early access, Tyler?
I did not, actually.
I remember reading a story, this is a quick anecdote just about the game and how they had originally didn't have the body mechanic. So when you killed an enemy, it didn't generate a body that you had to fight through or destroy or waste a turn. And then having that, whenever they made that change, people were like in revolt, being like, no, this is not how the game was played. This is not okay. And then they were like, eventually relented. They're like, listen, we'll give you an option to turn this off, but like, this is how the game is supposed to be played, is like, you have to fight through these bodies and like kind of work through the combat system this way. And I like appreciate how they gave the option, but also stuck to their guns, and how they've kind of just like slowly tweaked this game to make it even more difficult and frustrating. And I think in the past, I may not have felt that way, but I feel like Bloodborne has broken me as a person. So now I'm like, yeah, I can see why you'd want to do that.
Correct. And just to be fair, I mean, this game came out a year after Bloodborne. Not to say like, oh my gosh, they made this game a year after Bloodborne. It was probably in development before then. I mean, it definitely took cues from Dark Souls for sure. But this, I don't know. I'm glad I for some reason thought you had not played it for some reason. But I'm glad you have. Have you gotten back into it?
I have not played this game. This is just the story I heard.
Just for the okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. I misunderstood. My apologies.
It's in my list, my giant backlog.
Hopefully, Purposeful Gaming Challenge. We'll plug it away. Well, okay. Yeah. The game is interesting, and to say the least, it has some really interesting mechanics that you don't find in other turn-based style games, I guess, and it makes you kind of think. It's kind of like a baby's tactics game in the sense. Yes, Olivia, you have a question.
I was just thinking, can you really screw yourself over? Like, this is kind of almost a roguelike game, and I feel like in most roguelikes you can come back from it. In this game, can you just like totally decimate everything?
Yes.
Yep.
And
like,
I think
ruin your run.
If you have no more heroes, I don't think it's a game over, because there's a mechanic in the game where you get new heroes every time you come back from a dungeon, successful or not. So if everyone on your roster dies, like everyone, I think you get 25 or 30 people. If they all die, you can always select more heroes from the caravan that rolls in. So
okay. So you're never truly done with the game, but it'll just make it extremely hard at that point.
Correct. So here's the thing. When you continue to level up through this dungeon crawl, the dungeons get harder and harder. Let's say they're dungeon level 1, and then they get to dungeon level 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. If your heroes die, let's say they're level 5 or 6 at the time, and you're running through like a level 4 dungeon. If they all die, the people coming in from the caravan, they're fresh. They're level 1. And so then you have like your level 1 dungeon crawling this level 4 dungeon. And like, in that sense, like, yes, then like you're trapped in this kind of death spiral where you can't escape it. But that hasn't happened to me. And I feel like at the time when you get to like higher level dungeons or whatever, you kind of as a player know better about how to play the game.
Right.
So
have you played with the DLC at all? I've heard some really interesting things. Like there's like the vampire themed DLC that I thought was pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it recommended to have that stuff in your opinion?
Starting off, no. Hell no. In fact, I played around with it once, and then like I turned it off because I was like, I can't deal with this, and also like a new fresh party. It deals with this weird thing called like a blood curse. Rebecca, have you played this DLC?
Yeah, it's basically vampires. It just
vampires.
Randomly makes people into vampires, and it sucks. It's really hard.
Correct.
There's another one too, right? Is it The Color of Madness? I want to say.
Yeah,
I have not touched that one.
So that one I've touched. I haven't touched the vampire one, the blood court, unfortunately. Court of Blood too much, but the newest one I have touched, and it's basically just like a never-ending dungeon, or like a really long. It's like a what are they called? Like a arena where like there's waves of enemies, you know. So like the end goal is there is an end boss, but like it does just kind of keep going until you give up, essentially. And that one's interesting because it gives you a lot better loot and like has different trinkets, which are just like kind of like power ups that you can give your heroes. But that one I play with, it's a little bit less resource intensive than the Blood Court. I would say I'm not a big fan of the Blood Court just because I haven't like created this team that can always handle these vampires that kind of randomly at any time and point of the game.
Right. What platform did you play it on? Because I've heard mixed things about the Switch version.
I kind of would not recommend the Switch version. Not to throw shade at the Switch. I've also heard things about the Switch being under optimized for it. I played on PC. It's just to me, it's better optimized. It's just the flow is better. Rebecca, have you played on the Switch?
No, I've only ever played on PC. I was gonna buy it on my Switch because I liked the idea of being able to take it with me everywhere. But I heard it wasn't running well, and also tiny text.
Yes,
makes me.
I also heard the interface was like not great. Like it's not really optimized for a controller. So I think PC is the way to go.
Right. I know that they kind of did some tweaks here and there. I don't know how extensive they were. I would still kind of recommend to play it on the PC. I mean, like, I don't know. If you want to play on your Switch, do it, because who knows? Dark Souls on the Switch, surprisingly okay, you know? So
The Switcher?
They did
it.
They sure did. They put Witcher 3 on the Switch.
Say.
And that's it. That's all you gotta say. Well, I'm going to turn things over to someone else. Speaking of dead bodies and rot, Olivia, did you encounter any bodies in space?
Okay. Let's take this back a step. Have you all heard of a little game called Outer Wilds by Mobius Digital?
No, please tell me.
Okay,
tell
great.
Me about it.
So this weekend I went back to that game. It was my game of the year for last year, and I wrote an article about it. But I feel like I didn't really get into why this game is good. I just gave a lot of anecdotes, and it's important to say that, this is a space exploration game, and pretty much the less you know about it, probably the better experience you're going to have just learning everything. I'm going to be talking about some small parts of Outer Wilds that I think some people may consider spoilers, but I'm going to try to keep it as high level as possible. Just wanted to give that warning. I did see some bodies. You see some Nomai alien bodies there, all over the place. They're just littered with bodies on the solar system. Outer Wilds is a place, just to kind of set it up, it's a space exploration game that resets on a 22-minute loop. After you hit 22 minutes, the sun's going to explode. You come from a small planet called Timberhearth, and you're not a human. You're an alien. You're a part of a lower technology race, but you have a successful space program. Your alien race does, and your goal, while you're investigating an artifact from the precursor race that existed, you get the ability to start living in this time loop. And you don't know why. You don't know why the sun's exploding. You don't know about a lot of things in this world, and your goal is to kind of figure it all out. And you have free range to, explore anything in the world. You can just go. There is an achievement in this game just for starting a new expedition or a new game and just beating it in one loop. Now, you wouldn't normally be able to do that unless you had outside information, but you have all the tools available. All you need is the knowledge to actually execute on that stuff. It's like a lot of trust in the player to actually figure it out. And I think that trust can also have the double-edged sword of being really frustrating. And I think that there were parts of this game that I got really frustrated in, and I got stuck, and I just didn't understand what I needed to do. And I think the game really trusts you to go in there and be like, all right, you need to use logical deduction. You need to check all of your clues. You need to be bookmarking things, kind of going through, figuring it out, which is really refreshing. And I think there's a trend in games right now, like with Breath of the Wild, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, where it's like, hey, if you want to take on the final boss, we'll let you do that. If you just want to go like fight to the end of the game, you can do that. If you think you have the skills and resources to do it, we don't recommend it. And I think this game also has that kind of, it's following that trend even to more extreme, where it's like, just kind of go figure it out and make it happen. It's a pretty small solar system, so it only has 5 planets in it. About 5 planets in it. Just as an example, there.
Sorry.
What?
As I was gonna say, it was 8 planets. Sorry.
So every one of the 5 planets has multiple unique features. Like, so for example, Giant's Deep is a planet that's made out of water, but also it's got tornadoes on it that lift islands into space for some reason, and it's amazing. It's very good. Rebecca, what's your favorite planet on this game?
That's actually really hard. Oh, I like the one with the black hole in the middle. What's that one?
Yeah. Brittle Hollow.
Yes.
Brittle Hollow. Yeah.
That one.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that I like. I don't like the black hole in the middle, but I thought that had some of the most interesting, like, interiors with quotation marks.
Totally.
Yeah, I like that one.
I think the Hanging City, so just to paint a picture here, Brittle Hollow is a planet that has a crust on it and it has a black hole in the center of it. You find this out on your first visit to Brittle Hollow, and pieces of the planet are falling into the black hole. And by the end of the 22-minute loop, a majority of the planet's crust has fallen into the black hole. And there is a city on the inside of Brittle Hollow. And your goal is to try to get through that city while it's all falling into the black hole and trying to make it through alive and to get the clues out before you get sucked in this black hole. And even if you do get sucked in the black hole, there may be some things that you can do once you're on the other side of that. And it's just a super cool idea. I've never played a game like this before where it was this much of a sandbox and like the tools to actually go in there and try to figure it out are just given to you. And I feel like one of the most important tools is that kind of rumor board, map board, where it tells you like, hey, here's all the clues you've collected. Here are some things you should go check out. Like it usually has a little indicator to be like, you should go look into this more, kind of figure it out more. Tyler, did you use the like hint board at all? Like was that useful to you? Because I know for me I fought against that for a long time, and it wasn't until I embraced it that the game got a lot easier for me.
That's kind of funny. I did not use that at first because I was like, I don't know, it's whatever, I got my directions, like just go explore. And then like as the game progressed and things got more complicated and you're like, wait, what's going on, what am I doing, what have I done already? Like I definitely loved it. I wish my only like critique about it would be I wish you could pull it up at any time versus just within the ship. But like it was definitely a lifesaver. I used it a lot once I started using it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like life-saving. I can see all my progress and everything and what I haven't done yet. So definitely use it for sure at the end.
Yeah, I would recommend, because I was taking pen and paper notes and I was like writing down character names and a lot of information that I really didn't need to have that wasn't really important. So, and like I did get more out of it, like following this character's love story or like a couple's love story was interesting and fun, but I would recommend on a first playthrough, maybe just use the built-in note-taking system and not try to create this vast mind map on paper like I did. I had a point and I'm trying to get it back, trying to come back to this, trying to find my orbit in Outer Wilds.
Well, let me tell you about my favorite planet. And then
sure, let's hear
it. My favorite planet would be Brittle Hollow, but then I found the Ember Ash Twins, and I was like, this is actually pretty dope. And I love that one. And I guess subtle hint, it's like an hourglass. So like sand goes in one direction, and then it goes in the other direction. It's weird. Interesting.
And I think that like I found this on my first loop. I don't know how you guys did, but like where you're on the ash twin that's sucking up the sand, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna try to explore this cave system, and then the sand is just slowly rising, and you're like, that's bad. And then you're in the cave system, you're like, oh, I'm trapped. I'm going to die unless I run for my life right now. And I don't know how many times, like how terrifying that could be, and how the game just was like, actually, fuck you. Actually, you're just gonna die now, so enjoy that. Embrace the cold death here.
I will say that this game taught me I have a lot more phobias than I realized that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Outer Wilds.
Mm-hmm. So there is a creature in this. Most of the world is just environmental damage, environmental dangers that can kill you. But there is a creature that in this game that did scare the shit out of me in a way that like I don't think most games do, because the world seems so welcoming and open, and then you go into what you think is just another one of these welcoming spaces, and then you've gotten lost in a labyrinth of clouds and mist, and then a giant fucking fish is trying to eat you, and it's screaming, it's roaring at you. Oh, it's terrible.
You mean like the fish? You mean the planet with, surrounding like barbed wire thorns is not a welcoming space?
That should have been a sign. I should have used the visual clues, my context clues, to figure out that the giant thorny planet maybe wasn't welcoming. But I just remember finding that anglerfish, and like you're given a little like lampshade when you find the small anglerfish in the museum. But I don't know. That was such a shocking and devastating moment for me. I remember my point now. I was thinking about the quality of life improvements in this game, like not being able to pull up your mind map of all the rumors at the same time, or not having a clock to check like how much time you have left, or not having the ability to meditate to skip loops unless you meet a very certain requirement of like talking to this person multiple times in a row. Did you guys think that was like a good choice, Rebecca? How did you feel about that?
I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence, because I feel like on the one hand, this game benefits from its moments of obtuseness, because I feel like even now I see people on Twitter who are still finding stuff that's new. Like apparently on which one is I'm sorry, I'm like a little bit removed from this game and now I've forgotten all the names of the planets, but there is a planet that has lava on the surface in parts of it. Is that one of the ash twins? I think
so that's the Brittle Hollow.
The
and
moon
that's
of
the
Brittle
moon.
Hollow, I think, has...
Okay.
Has,
So, I guess apparently, somebody had just posted this recently, that if you are on that moon in a very specific lava pool right before the supernova, there is a skeleton praising the sun just in a pool of lava. It just like changes the ground. Yeah, and it's just like one of those little things. And so I feel like that kind of stuff is where the game really shines, because there's a lot of depth to it, and it gives a lot more depth than you even realize at the outset. And so I think the fact that people can still find new stuff like that is great. But I do wonder if hiding game mechanics is the best choice. You know what I mean? It's not like it's something you can play without, but, you know, maybe it's worth having easier access to. I don't know.
I agree. I wish that was just like an option, like a toggleable option where it's like, oh, do you want to have access to your mind map at all times? Oh, do you want to have a clock? Because I feel like even if that was something unlockable, that would have been useful. Mm-hmm. You know, I feel like I was listening to the Giant Bomb Game of the Year podcast where they were talking about like, oh, I always, in that, they talked about how they always had time to like solve the clues, solve the puzzles, and like, I always, in my experience, I felt like I was really trying to hustle to get something done whenever I heard that kind of musical cue to be like, the sun's going to explode, figure it out.
Yeah.
And that was really challenging for me when I'm like, well, I've kind of spent a lot of time trying to figure this out, and this sucks.
Yeah.
Totally.
What I hate is being rushed. And so since you have a 22-minute timer, what I did is there is an option within the menus, you can turn it on. When you're reading text, time stops. So it let me, at least whenever I was reading text, the time stopped for me. So my play sessions were a little bit longer than 22 minutes, but like when I wasn't reading text, the time stopped, which is really weird too, because if I was reading text, but my character like moved, the camera moved or something, time would resume again until I stopped. So I had to be stopped and reading the text for time to like fully stop. And then I wouldn't feel as rushed to get through all the writing and everything just because of like how slow I read or whatever. Not that I read slow, but I mean, you know, when there's a lot of reading in this game.
There's a lot of text.
There's a lot of text, and like even for you to just like understand the reading itself and be like, oh, okay, this is what's going on, takes some time. So like I appreciated that, I guess kind of accessibility option, but it's not like a well-known thing. I don't know if you guys knew about this or not.
I had seen it in my game.
Okay.
I ended up not turning it on because it was like, oh, you'll disable the animations of the characters when you're, or there was one where it's like disable animate, like slow time when you're talking to somebody. And I didn't turn that one on because I liked the animations so much. Like the little guys playing the drums. I was just like, oh, you're my best friend shirt. I'm so sorry that you're getting blown up. That really sucks. One of the two final things I was thinking about, I was the spaceship flying. I hated it for the longest time. I did not understand how it worked. And then I started focusing on getting that hotshot achievement where you have to like land. You have to basically, there's a station circling the sun. There's a way to get to it without actually flying to it, or you can just fly to it. And it's a really frustrating experience because you're trying to, you know, get an object that's moving around the sun. And if you screw up, if you go too low, you'll just fly into the sun. And if you go too high, you're just going to go flying off into nowhere. And that really, you have a lot of more control of that ship than I had thought. When I first started playing it, I just wish it was onboarded more easily, because I think the only real onboarding you get is, oh, you're going to fly this little drone around, and then even that's not it's not like flying the spaceship.
No.
Rebecca, it sounds like you had some issues flying the spaceship.
I never flew into the sun, but I definitely crashed into everything else.
How dare you? That was my first flight. I flew right into the sun my first time. I was just like, oh, because it has an autopilot feature. And that's how it happened, was I did an autopilot to a certain planet. And then it was like, oh, I'm routing you to the planet, but the sun's in the way. Let's go, straight through. And I crashed and burned. And I was like,
I did the same thing.
Thanks.
Did y'all figure out okay, so there's a system where you can lock onto a planet, and then it has two arrows that are pointing on. And like the idea is that you need to try to line up your ship. Follow the arrows. It's pretty self-explanatory. I didn't figure that out until like halfway through the game. I was like, I don't know what these like stupid arrows are. It
Right.
took me a very long time. I want to know if I'm alone here in messing this up. I think I'm alone. Oh no.
I mean, I kind of knew what they were. Yeah. I figured it out once I did autopilot, and it was like, oh, the arrows are like really big when you're not, on the correct trajectory. And then once you are, like they slowly go down. And I was like, oh, okay. But I could totally understand how you're confused, because there is, like I said, no onboarding. So it's just like, you got to figure it out for yourself. So don't feel bad.
Well, I think your point about Darkest Dungeon being like a game that doesn't teach you. Like, you would just have to learn through experience. And I think there's something really rewarding about that. And I think the hotshot achievement was like, okay, I need to know how to use every part of the ship. And it was a rewarding experience to figure that out. I wish it wasn't as frustrating. And I think that is, I had a lot of stuff to talk about, but I think this is a huge game. Everybody should go check it out if they get the opportunity to. The sense of discovery is unmatched by anything else I've played. Rebecca, I'll let you finish this off. What's your favorite instrument player? Which one do you like the best? Like, which instrument?
Banjo.
Banjo is very good. Tyler?
I was going to say, definitely the banjo. It's just so happy.
It's very happy. Also, there's multiple endings. That's what else I was going to bring up, is that there are multiple endings that I didn't even know existed until I started looking it up. So go try to find those. They're very cool.
Kazoo ending. Best ending.
Kazoo ending is very good. Rebecca, I'm sorry I went over on my time. I'll go ahead and pass this off to you.
Do you guys have a time for a guided meditation minute?
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
And also, listeners at home are welcome to do this as long as you're not driving. God, don't do this if you're driving.
Please don't do that.
All right. Okay, I want you guys to close your eyes. Okay. All right. Imagine an evening in the summer. The sun is set, and there's sort of a warm glow on the horizon. It's just sort of orange right over the tops of the horizon line. The air is warm, but it's not too hot. It's a little humid, maybe. Like there's a storm on the horizon. Not quite here yet, but just enough to make the air sort of thick with electricity. As the hum of cicadas in the trees falls away as the light fades, you realize that the hum left behind is the sound of cars on the highway. The days are long, and somehow the nights seem even longer. Tonight, you're making your last delivery. This feels like a delivery with greater purpose than the others, a more finite ending to a job than all of the ones before this. You feel age in your bones, the weight of the centuries before you, and the ghosts you'll bring into the ones after you. My game that I'd like to talk about is Kentucky Route Zero. You can open your eyes, but also if you're listening. So Kentucky Route Zero is a magical realist point-and-click adventure game that's presented sort of like a stage play. There are 5 acts. 4 of them have been released as of this recording, with one being released on the 28th, actually, so it's coming out this month. The acts have been released since January of 2013. So periodically over the last 7 years. Along with these 5 main acts, there are currently 4 interludes, which are little short games that are meant to be played in between the acts as you are traveling down the Zero. In Kentucky Route Zero, you get to interact with a lot of different characters, but you're primarily following the story of Conway. Conway is a delivery driver for an antique shop that is going out of business, and he's making his last stop. He's making his last delivery to a strange address that he can't seem to find. It seems like it doesn't exist on any of the main roads. And he starts asking around about how to get there. And as he's asking around, he learns about a highway that shouldn't exist, that sort of breaks the idea of space and time, called the Zero, that lives in the caves deep beneath Kentucky. Oh, so Kentucky Route Zero takes place over one, generally, it's maybe a little fidgety, generally over one evening, starting at dusk as the sun is setting, and then moving in towards the morning. This game is very hard to talk about for a lot of different reasons. I think in part because I love it so much, and it's become such a woven in part of my identity, I think, at this point, that it becomes very difficult to talk about. But I think Kentucky Route Zero is really incredible in a lot of different ways because it's very intensely narrative driven. As you're playing the game, you have the option to sort of respond to dialogue as different characters, and through your responses to dialogue, you have the ability to sort of shape how these characters are perceived. Everything is on one general straight and narrow path, right? So there's some little choices you'll make on the sides that usually just depends who you'll see, who you'll interact with, the kinds of people that'll come along with you on your journey. But you're all kind of leading towards this one point, and it's up to you to decide how much you want to explore, the struggles that these characters are having, They live in Appalachia, you know what I mean? Conway is a drunk who struggles with alcoholism. There are people who struggle with the loss of their parents in, horrible accidents as working class people. A lot of people are strapped with debt because they have nothing else and they use what little money they have to just try to stay alive. Corporations are basically destroying the way of life. People are losing their houses. People are getting relocated. When I think about this game, have either of you guys seen the movie Parasite? It came out this past year.
No.
I read the short description of it.
So
it's on my list.
So you don't have to have seen Parasite in order to understand this reference, but Bong Joon-ho, who's the director, talked about the movie after it was released to a Western audience, and he said, I really thought that a Western audience would bounce off of this movie because I felt like the story was very Korean. And he said, but it turns out we all live in the same world, and that world is called capitalism. And that's like a very intense part of the story that's, at work in Kentucky Road Zero. There's dream logic. There's, crazy, weird, magical realist. It makes a lot of allusions to like Gabriel Garcia Marquez and 100 Years of Solitude. It's very David Lynchian. There's, pieces of the Greek tragedy here. It's definitely wrought with literary references, so English majors would like this game probably. And in as much as it tells a story that's really deeply rooted in grief, in coping with grief, in struggling in a capitalist society, it also is about people who have an immense amount of hope and people who use whatever little things that they have to make magic amongst one another. So you can have your sad story, but you can also have androids who built themselves out of android parts and are in a band. You can also have a computer that runs on mold and maybe tells the future. You can have an office building that has a floor that's just bears. How about an old ship that's completely abandoned, that only is inhabited by cats? I don't know. You can have all of those things and more if you play Kentucky Route Zero. This game is... I'm looking forward now to the conclusion of it, as it's been many, many years of replaying it. This is a game that I do struggle to recommend in some regards because I think it can be a little dense, but I think, I don't know, it's very personally affecting for me. Like, I have never come to a piece of media quite like this one. And so, I was very lucky today was the countdown. They have a hotline that was leading up to the countdown of the announcement of the release of this game. And so me and a few people in the Patreon Discord were sitting on the line waiting for the number to tick over. And like the community really swirled up around this and like are now making art together and like are wanting to do stage plays. And, it's, I don't know, I feel like it's so much about the sense of community, bringing communities together, how communities can stay strong in the face of like what evils are in the world, that it just, to me, it's magic to every end of its being.
I wanted to build on something you said, because I haven't played into all of the acts. I've only played like Act 1 and part of Act 2, but I remember there is a part of Act 1 that's very, horrific. I think you're going through a mine and like you're listening to a radio and you're like kind of learning about like this mining community, and it's like very sad. Yeah. It's like about a tragedy that had happened. And I think a lot about my own time in Appalachia, like, going there every year now for the past like 5 years. And I just had no idea what Appalachia really was. And in most media, it's always predicted as like, or it's always shown as like, oh, this place without hope, this place where people are just dying and dead and there's nothing's going to change it. And I really appreciated how this game took a Appalachian staple like a coal mine and then also kind of had this whiplash effect of like, hey, we're going to also introduce these bears that are at an office, or all of these other like magical realist elements that combine a little bit of hope and positivity with this like also really serious and sad message. And I think that like compared to like the more Southern Gothic like literature where it's like, oh, this is all just gonna be really like sad and dreary, I appreciate that there's a lot of positivity in this game. I think that's really important and helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what's interesting is a lot of the magical realist parts, obviously they're play very straight because that's what magical realism is. But like, the personification of dead in this game is skeleton people. They're just skeletons. That's it. That's all they are. But there's something so menacing about that at the same time, you know what I mean? As the game progresses and, you know, as Conway sort of starts to become broken into this cycle that many other people are taken, he starts to become part of a skeleton. In part of Act 2, he breaks his leg and then becomes indebted to the Consolidated Power Company because his doctor has sold all of his like patient claims to this power company. And then you see his injured leg become a skeleton. You see his arm become a skeleton. You see him kind of slowly start to waste away, the way that this cloud has come over him. And yet you still get to visit their rum factory where they're just like, hey, come on in, this place is really cool, we're all skeletons, it doesn't matter, here's the coffins we burn for fuel anyway. It's like it's such a fascinating like dichotomy of emotions all the time, but I feel like tonally is immensely strong. Like it never falters, I don't think, for a second. Tyler, I know you said you were interested in playing this. I'm curious, you've not played any of the acts, right?
I have played Act 1.
Oh, you have?
I've played Act 1, and then I fell off of it, and then I felt, you know, at the point I was just like, well, I'll just wait till the whole game gets released, and then here we are 7 years later. So
no time like the present.
Yes, it's on my purposeful gaming list, and I might move it up. It was supposed to be like in April or something, but like, who cares? I can move it up and play through it sooner, so that maybe I can time it for the newest act to release. I will tell you, my most memorable moment of Act 1, for whatever reason, is when you enter the house to fix the TV. I don't know. Yes, that was for some reason, like, it like just, it's vividly in my mind. And like what happens in the house and like what goes on, and then you leave. And I don't know, it was very interesting. And like, and then of course, like Olivia mentioned, you know, you go through a tunnel, a creepy mine. I probably want to replay Act 1 just so it's fresh again in my memory, but I enjoyed what I played, and so I'm looking forward to the whole thing coming together and finally having an end. I don't know about the interludes. That's the only thing I might recommend or talk to you about later about, just because I don't know what to do.
Well, I was going to ask that question. Like, do you feel like the interludes are an important thing that you should play between the acts?
Yes, absolutely. So between Act 1, so when the TV edition releases on January 28th, that means the Steam PC versions, a PS4 version, Xbox version, and a Switch version, those are all releasing. Those are all going to be packaged with all 5 acts and all of the interludes. So between Act 1 and 2 is Limits and Demonstrations, which introduces you to a character that you meet in Act 2. Between Act 2 and 3 is the Entertainment, which kind of brings in some of the skeleton people, I guess, for lack of a better word. Between Act 3 and 4 is Here and There Along the Echo, which is a phone dialer. And then between Act 4 and now 5 is Un Pueblo de Nada, which it ties a little bit more into like public access television, which is really interesting. One thing I do have to say, like, I could talk about this game for 100 years. I named it my best game of the decade for a reason. But one thing I think that I come away from this game often really loving is how attentive it is to language. And this can be really subtle, but one moment that really sticks with me often is, I think, from the beginning of Act 3. Conway is having sort of a flashback to a conversation that he's having with Lisette, who is the woman that owns the antique store that he was working for, and they are old friends and have a history. And they're talking about a shared tragedy. And, you know, Conway is working to kind of process his feelings about this. It's not something he's really come to terms with. And Lisette, in her attempt to kind of comfort him, says, you know, this is stuff that we can't control. You know what I mean? This is why these things just tend to happen. This is why people call them and then you have the option to say an accident, a tragedy, a shame. And something about that, just like, I don't know, I think very deeply about how much just a word, and that's something that Kentucky Road Zero does a lot, is how phrases, how words have so much meaning and can really change how we perceive each other, you know, how we perceive our communication with each other, and how we perceive our own sort of traumas. So, I don't know. I could cry talking about this game, honestly. So, I love it. I think everyone should play it. Now you have no excuse because all 5 acts are out. So I know for all those of you who've been waiting for 7 years, well, no time like the present, baby. It's here. It just does everything well.
at this point, do you think we should just wait for the TV release, or do you think we should start playing it immediately?
It's kind of up to you. I'm gonna probably play a marathon through again. I would say it would maybe, like, a full playthrough maybe would take you 10 hours, maybe. The acts themselves are not super long. Act 3 and 4 are pretty behemoths on their own right. Act 4, you have the option to do, like, you get 3 instances where you can choose where you want to go, like if you want to talk to this person or this person, and so you get different vignettes, so it kind of lends itself to playing through a couple of different times. So it really kind of is up to you and how much you want to sit and really kind of grind out the experience, but I think you could wait for the TV edition and then just sit and just play them all, and then you'll have all of the interludes just available to you easy. I believe there's also going to be an epilogue interlude as well.
Interesting.
Cool. Well, I hope this last chapter gives you a good, like, finale. I feel like that's an impossible task, but I hope that it gives you some closure on whatever you need closure on.
I think it will. I have a lot of faith. I think the thing that was the most sort of fun about this to me was that the Discord that I'm in, which is run by the developers, is full of people who are artists, and so it has a little bit of a serious tone because people tend to be like, it tends to be sort of like a literary, artistic, intense competition. Not competition, but you know what I mean? Like, people are always like, oh yes, my auteur self has made this thing. And then last night, when people were getting all really hyped, everyone was just typing like, leg debt, and then everyone put leg debt in their thing, and like people were just screaming and like posting stupid emojis, and like people totally lost whatever that weird facade was that we had, and like turned into ravenous beasts and were arguing about what the name of the dog was and like like what a font was called, I don't know. And so it was really funny, and it was like really cathartic to have that. And so I feel like at the end of the day, you know, even if the act isn't what I hope it to be, this game has brought me so much joy and fulfillment and inspiration, and I got a tattoo of it because I love it that much. Like, it's given me so much over these years that I feel like there's nothing that I could do to give back to how much it's given me. So, wow. Anyway. Also, there's bluegrass in it, and who doesn't love bluegrass? Am I right?
Exactly. Maybe we'll have to definitely come back and revisit either our thoughts collectively, or at least, Rebecca, your thoughts. And
I want Rebecca just to record her own, like,
I know,
here's
I do
her
too.
Going off for an hour about it. I could listen to that.
I really do. Let's dig in deep. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing your wonderful games with me. Hopefully you, the listener, have some greater insight into these games that we recommend that you play. But that'll do it for now. This has been a Greetings From podcast. You can find us everywhere podcasts are hosted, such as Apple Podcasts, Simplecast, Spotify, or the internet. Send your questions to greetingsfromcast@gmail.com, or visit us on the web at greetingsfrom.zone, where you can read our many articles that we mentioned, such as our Game of the Decade and our PGC reviews. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at greetingsfrompc. My name is Tyler, and I am your host. You can find me at World Jumpin'. Rebecca, where can people find you?
People can find me at Rebecca Faye on Twitter.
And Olivia, where can we find you?
You can find me at LiveJQ on Twitter.
Thank you all for joining us. Have a good day or night. Hey gamers, that was it. That was the podcast. Thank you for listening. Our intro and outro song is an edited version of Deep Fried Space Food by Substitute Sandwiches. You can find a link to the song, plus links to everything else we talked about this week, in the podcast description. Please visit us at greetingsfromcast.zone to listen to more episodes, or to find out more about your host and read our various video game articles. You can also follow us on Twitch and Twitter at greetingsfrompc. Send your questions, messages, or rants about your favorite video games to greetingsfromcast@gmail.com. Or you can call us on our hotline at 347-642-6377. Bad with phone numbers like me? Just remember to dial Firm Gamers and you'll reach us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.